My daughter had not smiled in 2 years, I had counted. 731 days since her mother was carried out of Thornvale on a bier of pine and snowflower, and in all that time Lyra had not laughed, had not run, had not reached for my hand the way she used to when she was small enough to fit inside my cloak. She ate, she slept, she sat at lessons with the quiet obedience of a child who had learned that wanting things led only to losing them. My counsel said she would grow out of it. My healers prescribed warm teas and rest. My wolf said nothing, only lay heavy in my chest like a stone that had forgotten it was ever warm. I brought her to the winter market because her nurse said the lanterns might lift her spirits. I did not believe it. I came because I was her father, and a father keeps trying even when he has run out of ideas. Thornville's market was thick with people that evening. Fur traders and candle sellers, vendors of spiced cider and salted meat, the whole breadth of the kingdom condensed into one candlelit square. Lyra walked beside me with her hand barely in mine, her eyes moving across the stalls without interest. I watched her face the way I had learned to watch it. Always hoping, always careful not to hope too much. Then she stopped. I felt it before I saw it. A small tug at my fingers as she pulled away from me, drawn toward a table so modest I had walked past it without a glance. Bundles of dried herbs, clay jars stoppered with wax. A woman behind the table, unremarkable in a brown wool cloak, her hands busy tying sprigs of something silver green into neat bundles. She did not look up. Lyra walked straight to her. I almost called her back. My instinct, the king's instinct, the father's, was to reach out and retrieve her. But something else stopped me. My wolf, which had lain still in my chest for 2 years, lifted its head. Lyra pressed her face directly into the woman's cloak. The woman went very still. Then slowly, carefully, as though she was afraid of startling a bird, she set down her herbs and lowered one hand to rest on my daughter's hair. "Hello, little one," she said. Her voice was quiet. Not the practiced softness of someone performing gentleness. Something underneath it. Something that simply was. Lyra said without lifting her face. "She smells like home, Dad. I do not know how long I stood there. Long enough that the candles in the nearest lantern guttered and steadied. Long enough that the woman finally looked up and found me watching her and had the composure not to flinch. Her eyes were gray, steady, and held no particular awe of me. That alone was remarkable. I am sorry, she said. She came to me. I didn't. Don't apologize, I said. I did not know why I said it. I only knew that I could not bear for her to be sorry for this. Her name was Wren. I asked before we left the market, while Lyra still had her hand, swinging it back and forth the way she had not done in 731 days. A village healer, she told me. She sold herbs and remedies here on market nights, tended the sick in the valley settlements by day. No rank, no bloodline she knew of. No reason at all that my daughter should have walked to her through a crowd as though following a thread-pulled taut. I asked her to come to the hall. Not a command. I was careful, deliberate, because she was watching me with those gray eyes, and I did not want to be the kind of man who commanded what he should ask. I said Lyra had not reached for anyone in 2 years, and I would like her to visit. Just once. She came. The wolves knew before I did. There are 6 of them that run the inner corridors of the hall. Old wolves, trained, not given to sentiment. They suffered strangers with indifference. When Wren came through the east door the morning after the market, her herb satchel over one shoulder, 3 of them came to her in under a minute. By the time she had reached the inner room where Lyra waited, all 6 were arranged around her like an escort. I watched from the doorway. Lyra was sitting at the long table with her untouched breakfast. When Wren came in, she looked up, and something moved in her face, the first real central animation I had seen in her in so long it struck me like a sound. In a room I thought was permanently silent. "You came," Lyra said. "I said I would," Wren told her, and sat down without ceremony, as though she had always known where to put herself in a room. They talked about the herbs in her satchel. Wren let Lyra crush a sprig of something between her fingers and smell it, then guess what it was for. Lyra guessed wrong and laughed. A short, startled sound, as if she had surprised herself. And Wren laughed too, and the 6 wolves lay down across the threshold like they had decided no one was leaving. In my chest, where my wolf had been stoned, something moved. It was not the bond, not yet, but it was the memory of what the bond felt like, a warmth behind the ribs, directional pointing. I had not felt that in 2 years either, and it frightened me enough that I walked away from the doorway and stood in the corridor until I was certain of my own face. She came back the next day and the day after that, always at Lyra's request, always the same quiet arrival, satchel, gray eyes, the wolves already waiting. On the 4th day, one of the older wolves, Marsh, the gray one, 12 years old and particular about everything, was limping. I had sent for the pack healer. He was delayed. Wren found Marsh in the inner yard before any of us thought to warn her away, crouched beside him with her hands moving over his foreleg with the same unhurried attention she gave my daughter. She did not speak. The wolf did not pull away. I stood at the archway and watched her work. It was the silence that undid me. The absolute willingness she had to simply be present, not performing care, not working for an audience, not angling for gratitude. Her hands were sure, and her attention was complete, and Marsh exhaled a long breath through his nose and dropped his great head against her knee. The mark on my wrist burned, not painfully, but unmistakably, the mate mark, which had been cool and faint since before Lyra was born, which I had given up understanding, which my counsel had politely stopped asking about. It burned the way an ember burns when you breathe on it. A sudden, certain heat. I looked down at it. A faint luminescence beneath the skin, the shape of it, two wolves running, briefly visible, as if lit from within. Wren looked up. She saw me looking at my wrist. She did not know what it meant. I could tell. She had that expression of someone who has noticed a thing they don't yet have a name for. I crossed the yard and crouched beside her. She held my gaze. Wren, I said. Yes, I did not have a speech prepared. I had not prepared for any of this, not the market, not my daughter's face, not a wolf 12 years old choosing a stranger's knee, not the mark burning. Lyra asked me this morning if you would stay. I said, not visit, stay. She was quiet for a moment. What did you tell her? That I would ask you. She looked at Marsh, who was nearly asleep, then at me. Why would you ask me? Because as I do not command what I should ask, I said, and because I stopped. Turned my wrist so she could see the mark, the faint glow of it still visible in the cold morning air. Because you should know what you are before you decide. She studied it the way she studied everything. Carefully, without rushing, with those gray eyes that held no particular alarm. I've heard of mate mark, she said at last. This one has been cold since before my daughter was born, I said. It is not cold now. She looked at me for a long time. The yard was silent. Even Marsh had stopped breathing audibly. She called me home, Wren said finally. Not a question. I'll stay, she said. Simply, the way she said everything. When my council gathered that afternoon, I did not ask their opinion. I told them that the woman who had come to tend my daughter and my wolf would remain in Thornvale as the Alpha's chosen, that the mark had spoken and I had not asked it to, and that any man in the room who wished to argue the logic of fate was welcome to try. No one tried. There was no ceremony. There was only Lyra, who took Wren's hand at supper that evening and held it through the whole meal, and the 6 wolves arranged along the wall, like they had finally gotten what they wanted, and the mark on my wrist warm and steady for the first time in longer than I could say. My daughter smiled. A full smile, unhurried, her mother's smile. I did not count the days after that. There was no need.